What I'm finding very odd is that I'm rowing, but we have somebody on a tiller, so I'm not making any difference as to where we're going at all. I'm just the engine. I'm just the tool.
Certainly the tool. It's the first time I've picked up the camera to talk to you today, although we've already been at it for an hour and a half. That's really because both Liz and I are on tenterhooks at the moment, obviously just a bit worried about the engine. There's a couple of things going on here as well which kind of like adds to the stress. The first is being in a position or not being in a position to drop the hook if anything were to go wrong. Right now we're in 70 metres of water. You see land is only just over there. But there is nowhere around here to drop the hook except random rocks, reefs and obstructions which kind of plague our entire track today, so we've got to be careful of those. So that's going through your mind because, you know, in these situations, in fact all the time, I always try and have contingency plans in case anything goes wrong. What were to happen if we lost the engine? Is there any wind? What's the current doing? And so on. The second issue was actually navigating around here. I spotted this yesterday. I was trying to work out a route through that gap there, which looks straightforward, but actually if you compare what's on the charts with what you can see on satellites, nothing seemed to make sense. And to compound the situation further, I've got two versions of Navionics, one on the boat, which was last updated about a year ago, and then the one on my phone, which is much more recent. And the one on the phone was showing new rocks which didn't appear here. So I then started plotting where these rocks were, and some ended up being actually on the island. Those rocks there on the chart on the island. One chart shows that island as one piece of land, another one shows it as two pieces of land. Anyway, it was very confusing. And in those situations when I'm not sure, I think it's just safer just to keep clear. And so we came around the outside of it, but of course that does put us in much deeper water. So anyway, yeah, it's just stressful at the moment. I think if and when we get to the next anchorage safely, we can relax a little bit. But at the moment, we just, just need to keep our wits about us and just keep an eye on what we can do were something to go wrong. You said you wanted fillets this time instead of steaks. How about that for a fillet?
Wow. Wow. Oh.
So this is definitely one of the most taxing entrants we've made into an anchorage. Partly because there's reef, so we had to come around in between two reefs, partly because there's no visibility. As you can see, we had yet another whiteout, which is normal, but mainly because the charts are out, and the charts are out significantly. Were you to try and navigate into this by charts alone, you would have run aground by now. So if you do want to travel along this coastline, make sure you've got satellite images, because it was only by using satellite images we were able to plot our course in advance and literally just rely on those, because of the lack of visibility, we can't see half the reefs we're coming into, so it's a little bit of a gamble. I said to Liz, if I get uncomfortable, I'm going straight out again. But look at this, shitty weather, but it's absolutely flat as a pancake. So what I'm hoping is that if it blows from the southwest, which is there, it's that cloud there, we've got 200 metres of decent depth behind us that way, And if there was any swell, which seems to be these days coming from the northeast, it's coming through there, and as you can see, there is no swell. So let's see how things settle down in here. Today's been fraught, by the way. Not been in a good mood, just because of the whole filter situation. And you know, my worry is that if anything were to happen, engine cuts out with no wind, what do you do? What do you do? Worth thinking about that, isn't it?
Why do you always come when I'm really sweaty and hot?
I just want to see what you're doing.
I'm cooking up some onions and garlic, and I've run out of ginger, so I have to use ginger powder.
What have we got here?
This is the first meal from the wahoo. It's pan fried, so it's just quite seared, on a quite hot pan. That's it really, and it's got scallions and garlic and all the usual sort of stuff with mashed potatoes. That's it. In that clip, Jamie alluded to the fact that he was feeling anxious, and I think that's probably going to get worse as the weeks go by. You were anxious, weren't you?
I was very anxious, and something that we haven't yet alluded to in the videos, but we kind of mentioned is there's another new problem developing on the boat, and you'll find I don't talk about it too much because I kind of buried my head in the sands with that one. That will come to light eventually, but yeah, so I was getting really quite anxious, and of course very keen to get back and visit my family, which was part of the reason for this trip, was to get the boat somewhere safe so that we could fly back to the UK.
But we chose to go straight from 2 years pretty much doing nothing in lockdown in Sabah to suddenly doing an extremely difficult, very difficult adventure. One of the most difficult we've had in the last 20 years. So it was always going to never be easy, was it?
No, but here we are in real time now. We are back in the UK visiting family, and we managed to put in one of our traditional family holidays on the Suffolk east coast with my two nephews, Seth and Freddie.
Oh gosh, it was so lovely to see them. They've grown up beyond all imagination, and Seth and Freddie came with us with their dad Marcus and Uncle Tim and your mum and dad. It was great, wasn't it?
It was great. And by the way, we're including Fred and Sethy in this little clip because Freddie was always asking about YouTube. He said, "Oh, you're YouTubers. Am I going to be on YouTube?" Well, Freddie, you are.
There's little more quintessentially British than taking a bucket and spade to the pebbly beaches of the east coast of Suffolk and burying a child in the sand. A local had told us the North Sea was exceptionally warm this time of year. "Why would you want to go abroad when you have this on your doorstep?" she said. I guess we're just acclimatised to the tropics because the water was cold enough to provoke a sharp intake of breath and dash to safety. And yet, despite the temperature, and despite the fact the shingle beach makes it difficult to build sandcastles, when you're a kid at heart and the sun is out, it's the perfect spot to hang out with the family. It's what happy memories are made of. Jamie's family has been coming to this historic coastal region for half a century, and this year the trip started in Aldeburgh, once home to Romans and Vikings, and more recently the composer Benjamin Britten. Visitors are drawn to the fishing huts where fresh crab, lobster and sole are on display. Herring has been part of East Anglian life since before the Normans, and Aldeburgh started thriving after its shifting coastline opened up a sheltered haven, making it perfect for shipbuilding. Although its nautical importance diminished after the River Alde silted up, the fishing industry continued. Jamie talked to one of the local fishermen who explained that there are just 3 boats left operating from Aldeburgh Beach. Jamie remembers many more than that when he was a kid. This is thanks in part to government bureaucracy and rising fuel prices, and the fact that potential young skippers are drawn to the guaranteed income from offshore wind farms. A 3-day easterly storm will put Aldeburgh's fishing boats out of action, and so too their income, whereas boat handlers working for the farms get paid irrespective of whether they go out to sea or not. Jamie's new friend lamented that in 20 years there will be no fishing left from the coast of Aldeburgh and the huts will stand empty. Crazy Gulf, duck pond, tea room, what more could you ask for in a seaside town in England?
Welcome to Southwold. Hi!
Southwold is so intrinsically tied to the sea that the local brewery's best-selling beers are named Ghost Ship and Broadside. The town sign depicts 2 battling galleons from the Battle of Solebay when, in 1672, the British and the French fought off the Dutch just east of Southwold. It's more famous today as a popular seaside resort with a working lighthouse, pier and many splendid beach huts. Southwold is also a retreat for the well-heeled, and let's face it, when a 2-bedroom terraced house goes for £750,000, you'd have to be well-heeled. Even the beach huts can fetch almost 6 figures. But we're not here to navel gaze, we're here to eat fish and chips on the pier and take in the sun. It's the Southwold Sailors' Reading Room, built in 1849, free to enter. Just one big room packed with fabulous stuff, and you can sit quietly away from the mayhem of the beach and all the families and the kids running around. Lovely spot, recommend it. Leiston Abbey was founded in 1182 by Ranulph de Glanville, one of Henry II's cronies. Around 150 years later, the swampy ground on which it sat made the site untenable, so the Earl of Suffolk moved the monastery to higher ground and rebuilt it where we still find its ruins today. In the 16th century, Henry VIII's Act of Suppression and the dissolution of the monasteries meant any small abbeys with an income of less than £200 a year were seized by the Crown. And, in the classic tradition of nepotism, Henry gave the abbey to his brother-in-law, the Duke of Suffolk. The buildings were used as a farm, with the church itself becoming a barn, and a farmhouse, still standing today, was built into the corner of the nave and the transept.
Well, this is a first. We've got Liz rowing the dinghy, but it's not Esper's dinghy. This is the boating lake in Thorpeness, and it's a family tradition. Every year we fight over who's going to be on the tiller, and today we've got Freddie steering. So what's your technique today, Elizabeth?
Well, my technique today is it's all in the wrist action, and particularly on the right hand wrist, and a little bit of shoulder action. Basically just trying to, what I'm finding very odd is that I'm rowing, but we have somebody on a tiller, so I'm not making any difference as to where we're going at all. I'm just the engine. I'm just the tool.
You're certainly the tool.
In the late 19th century, Thorpeness was a small fishing village with folk tales of smuggling. In 1910, Glencairn Stuart Ogilvie, a rich Scottish barrister, bought the village and much of the surrounding area and converted it into a private fantasy holiday village for his family, friends and colleagues. He added a country club, tennis courts, a swimming pool, golf course with clubhouse, and loads of holiday homes, all built in Jacobean and Tudor revival styles. Although descendants of Ogilvy were obliged to sell off much of his land and open it up to the public, they still have a strong presence. Like many others, Jamie's family has been holidaying at Thorpeness for generations, and many of the original craftsman's family still live there. The Thorpeness windmill was built in 1803 at Aldringham and moved to Thorpeness in 1923 by Ogilvy. Originally built as a corn mill, at Thorpeness it was used to pump water to the iconic house in the clouds. The centrepiece of Thorpeness is the picturesque mere or artificial lake. Covering over 60,000 acres and 3 feet at its deepest, it's dotted with islands, channels and inlets based on the theme of Peter Pan. There's Wendy's house, a pirate's lair, the smuggler's cove and, of course, a crocodile. Some of the original rowing boats with names like Shamrock, Mabel or Thistle are still available for hire.
How's the steering going, Freddie?
Fun. Do we have a song? No.
The owl and the pussycat went to sea.
No.
On our way home, we stopped off at Snape Maltings, a beautiful heritage site of converted Victorian buildings set on the River Alde, surrounded by an area of outstanding natural beauty. It's very much a centre of the arts, focusing mainly on music. But on this visit, we were taken by the new sculptures on display, particularly Migrant, by Alison Wilding. Set in the nearby long grass, the meaning of the figures is ambivalent. They have the angles of sails or aeroplane wings, but are they arriving or are they leaving?